At least Republicans don't lie to you. That's what people who have moved to the right have said. But have you considered that it's not that Republicans don't lie to you, it's that you don't understand how they are lying to you? So let me help you. In fact, let Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, help you with his 7 core principles of conservatism. He drafted this short summary of the central beliefs of American conservatives to help anchor the work of the Republican Study Committee and the timeless principles that made our nation the freest, strongest, and most prosperous in human history. What you will understand is that the Republicans consider America to be the territory, not the constitutional republic. Since that time, many other conservative organizations and lawmaking bodies nationwide have adopted this list as their own. And now you will understand how they are lying to you, and you will no longer be gullible to being lied to. So you're welcome. Listen up. Welcome to Debunking Republicans. We will start today with his first core principle, which is individual freedom. Now, you think it sounds great. However, if you think that America was founded on freedom, go to the Constitution right now. If you find a guarantee for freedom other than the freedom of speech, then I am wrong, but I am not wrong. So go look. Let's read through this and process through it to consider whether or not these principles are aligned to American constitutionalism. And you'll see that in a good amount of it, it's not. Mostly, they lie to you about our actual foundations. Let's start. The birth of our great nation was inspired by the bold declaration that our individual God-given liberties should be preserved against government intrusion. This is false. This is false. I'm giving you a multidimensional perspective because I have political science, I have international law, and I have American constitutionalism. So I can understand the political jargon, the legal jurisprudence, and the global definitions that our government has positioned when it comes to American constitutionalism and particularly constitutional supremacy. So why is this false? Our modern United States of America was established in 1789 upon ratification of the United States Constitution. This is under the constitutional supremacy above that of the history that we have under the Declaration of Independence. So Declaration of Independence is originalism, so it's much more history, guidance towards that history, and the Constitution is our actual social contract that is our compass and our governance. We are founded on individual liberties. However, the God-given argument here is originalist, not constitutionalist, so it's not a central part of our social contract apart from freedom of religion. The government is supposed to work outside and indifferent to religion, not as a vehicle for or towards it. We are guaranteed liberties which, contrary to conservative limited comprehension, can be regulated under a strict threshold outlined in our Equal Protection Clause, Amendment 14. To say otherwise is to deny constitutional supremacy, which is anti-patriotic, as we as U.S. citizens exist as guardians to defend constitutional legitimacy. Next, that same conviction informs our conservative policies, decisions still today. This is true, actually. Conservative policies are driven by a resentment that a progressive constitution was ever passed, and even worse, was made inclusive against white men interests. When they call for state right supremacy, what they want is the Articles of Confederation, weaker federal government, and large state power without federal checks against constitutional violations, and limited to no taxation. Government efficiency, right? In America, we proclaim the self-evident truths that all of us are created equal and granted by God the same inherent freedoms. Misleading. Yes, the Declaration of Independence is a central foundation to American independence, but not to our political compass. The Declaration also called for the overthrowing of a tyrant, aka DT government, but that is treason unless it is triggered by the own escalation of force. Likewise, Declaration mentions God, but our Constitution doesn't. God didn't give American rights, a bunch of white men at a constitutional convention did. However, we did retain that all men are created equal, translated through the power of we the people in the United States Constitution, such as the natural rights to life, liberty, conscious, free speech, and the free exercise of religion, and the ability to pursue happiness, own property, build wealth, and defend ourselves and our families. True and false. We are guaranteed natural rights to life and liberty, but the right to conscience is not real. It is not in the social contract, then it is not a natural constitutional right. Rather, the freedom to conscience can be processed under Amendment 10, but to say it's a natural right is to say a 6-year-old has the natural right to get a tattoo. Americans do not have the constitutional freedom of conscience, and no court order, only an amendment can change that. Freedom of speech is a protected right, which Republicans seem to be forgetting, and so is the freedom of religion, which means we are prohibited from being a Christian nation, funny enough. You can't pursue happiness when you can't afford to live. So obviously, they only care about the pursuit of happiness for the wealthy. We don't actually have the inherent right to own property. You actually own a subscription to it. And if you don't pay property tax, who cares? You finish paying it off, right? You lose your home. You're not a homeowner, you're a subscriber to the lot. Building wealth is another Republican addition that isn't actually in the Constitution, but capitalism is definitely a means to a socialist end, the public good. Look at the preamble. 2A can be restricted since it's not a natural right to feel entitled to taking a life. The right to life is a freedom, the right to bear arms is a liberty. Freedoms cannot be restricted, liberties can under a strong threshold. Finally, the purpose of government is to secure these rights, and the ideas we advance should always aim to maintain and increase the liberty of the American people. Sounds great, huh? Let's dig into it. The purpose of government is to secure constitutional rights and constitutional order, not to sabotage the processes and advancement, to weaken it for easy takeover and replace it with a conservative constitution so you don't have to lie anymore about what's on it. America is founded on individual liberties, not freedoms. Freedom cannot be restricted. Liberties can. We have the freedom to the right to life, but not to own arms if it exists as a threat to the right to life. It can be controlled then. 2A is a liberty, voting is a freedom. Freedoms can be infringed. They're natural in our republic. Republicans can't understand simple American politics because their entire platform is changing the truth to people who don't care enough to stand for anything but themselves. The Republican Party is for those who love sadism and power, manipulation, gaslighting, and in this series, we will determine how they are doing this, illustration of how they are misaligned to our Constitution and how they are the unpatriotic political party. Does this mean the Republican voters hold the same un-American principles? No, it's much more that the voters are being lied to because they don't know better enough. Does this mean that you should become a progressive? It would be nice. However, I acknowledge that you may have different policies than me. However, your party, the Republican Party, is misaligned to our entire constitutional contract. And here we will use this American constitutionalism to prove it. The Republican Party is the anti-America party. Sure, you can be an American with much more traditional policy. However, what does it mean by traditional? Is traditional going back to Jim Crow laws, or is traditional you wanting to be like the Amish? Because no one bothers the Amish. People bother people who are being racist, who are pushing white supremacy. You can be a traditionalist without being a white supremacist. Our common ground shouldn't be bipartisanship of policy that is messy. It should be bipartisanship of constitutional policy that reaches that middle ground and promotes a more perfect union. But that will never be accomplished to the Republicans because they're just lying to you and you don't know enough to even catch them on their lies. So I'm going to teach you.